Hey folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. We have a guest today, Carlos. It's about time. People don't want to keep hearing us, right?
They want guests. They want high profile, noteworthy, and in this case, an illustrious and prolific author, Sean.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were going to introduce her. Come on.
No. You introduce her. You have the dulcet tones. Who do we have joining us?
We have the great Helene St. James, who's just coming off the draft, just coming off the NHL draft, of course, right? Just coming off free agency, about to go on vacation. So we need to get her out of here. Let's see if by the end of this podcast we can get her to reveal where she's going to go in the world. Someplace
the Concorde will wait for her. She's fine. It's a private plane. She's
brush it off. I'm sure having sat somewhere for however long they stopped since when I don't think they've flown it in 10 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. Well, anyway, Helena, thanks for making time. Thanks for joining us. There's some things that have happened with the Red Wings, eh? A few things.
Very busy few weeks, which is why Steve Yzerman said last week that amongst all the things he needed, sleep was a priority as well as scoring. But he has addressed almost everything, gotten through the draft, signed half a dozen people in free agency, and then most of all, because I think coming out of free agency, you had to look at that team and go, how are they any better than the team that finished this past season? And then he goes and adds Alex DeBrincat, and voila, suddenly they look just so much better.
What did you think of that signing? What did you, because I'm sure you hear more from Wings Nation, Wings fans than we do, obviously. But there was this sense that, oh my God, what's happening? Why is it taking so long? And then he announces the deal, and it seemed like a pretty good deal, right? He didn't give up too much. The contract extension was reasonable compared to what the numbers were out there at first, right? The 7-8 years for $8-9 million or whatever.
Yeah.
So what did you think of the deal?
I thought he pulled off a steal. I mean, Dominic Kubalik, he had 20 goals for them this past season, but most of them were scored in the second half. He really kind of faded mid-season, and he's 27, probably might have been re-signed, but certainly wasn't a key part of the rebuild. Sebrango, kind of a mid-range defense prospect. They really had probably 4 or 5 guys ahead of him on the depth chart, so not a big loss to give him away either. And then they had to give up a first-round pick, but they will still have either their own, or they get to choose which one is. They can send either their own or Boston's, whichever one is lower or higher. Whichever one is, they'll keep whichever one is the best one. So that's the benefit there of the Tyler Bertuzzi trade. And I think now, after free agency, or at any point you had to ask, is who they are going to get better than Tyler Bertuzzi, Jacob Vrana, and Philip Roenick, the 3 guys they gave up at the trade deadline. And now I think you can say, yes, with adding Alex, they are.
How much did it help Yzerman, I guess, get DeBrincat? Because he mentioned that he's obviously from Farmington Hills. He's played locally, junior hockey and everything. And Yzerman mentioned that he's tracked his whole career, basically his amateur career. That definitely helped him, I think, understand who DeBrincat is beyond just a goal scorer. His personality, all that stuff. I think he was an alternate captain for the Blackhawks. But how much did it help him, I think, swing that deal? Because one of the first things DeBrincat said on his conference call was that nobody was happier than his mom and dad coming home. Was it kind of not quite a hometown discount, but friendly for the hometown team that he grew up cheering for? Did that help Yzerman swing the deal, do you think?
Yeah, nobody was happier except his mom, dad, and the Detroit Pistons for that free advertising from his swanky teal cap, I think. But, it helped, but he still got a really nice payday, and there weren't a ton of teams that could have fit him in at this point. So, I don't think he gave up a lot. I really think, the term is what benefits both sides. Maybe he has 4 phenomenal seasons and, significantly increases his next contract, but 4 years is just a nice flexible number, and it's nice for the Wings. I think they're just far better for teams in general not to get locked up to most of their players for 7-8 years, because it really just handcuffs so much of what you're able to do. So this, it's a degree of security, certainly, but it's not where the Wings are locked to the guy for the next 8 years. So, yeah, I think, coming home, I mean, the Wings were in the position of, they had the advantage of knowing he wanted to come here, and they had enough assets and they had the salary cap space. Not a lot of teams can do that. But we've seen it too, where the Wings, lose out, other teams lose out because a player wants to go someplace else, which is home. So, that's kind of an intangible that you benefit from every now and then. But I think it's just, it was also really just that the Wings were probably one of the few teams whom he was interested in going to that had the cap space to add him. And, his parents, I think, are also delighted because they just had a kid. So now the grandkid is close to home too.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and not to cut you off, Sean. I'm sure you have a lot of hockey questions, but deep dive questions. But what kind of player, actually, for people, not Sean, but for people who may not be as familiar with DeBrincat, played for Chicago, and then he was traded, I believe, to the Senators last year. But what kind of player are they getting? What kind of player are we going to see at Little Caesars Arena?
He's just a really dynamic winger, has 241 goal seasons to his credit. Just one of those kind of like Jacob Arana, where just suddenly out of nowhere, he finds a way to score. And most of his shots, I saw somewhere in Ottawa, they were saying I think he had 26, 27 goals with them, but they said he just hit so many goal posts. He probably would have had 35 had any of those gone in. That he has a high chance shot that and even if it doesn't go in, then it creates a really good high percentage rebound. So just a player who's going to make the top line so much better, and because of that, the second line and third line will be better because now they'll be scoring on possibly they can create 3 scoring lines. And he really should have a significant impact on the power play too, which is something they've been looking for so long. I mean, their power play has just been the definition of inefficient or inconsistent for so long. Even when they put all their best players on it, at times it just But with adding DeBrincat and now having Moritz Seider already on the back end, and Shane Gustis-Behere, the power play guy that they brought in to replace Philip Roenick, it looks like that, they may actually be better on that end of special teams.
As Carlos would say, the one-timer is a friend of the power play. Speaking of lines, though, it's going to be interesting to see okay, DeBrincat and Dylan Larkin are for sure on the first line. Do you say, all right, what do you have, Lucas Raymond? And you put him up there too and then see what he can do with that? Kind of like DeBrincat got the opportunity to do that in Chicago with Kane.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to
stack it that much. Or
just, you might want to put a really strong defensive forward in that group as well. And, they can't get caught up in, Dylan Larkin is very good defensively, but, you can't get into a situation where, you may be scoring a lot of goals, but you're also on for a lot of goals against. So, I think that remains to be worked out in training camp. But the other thing to consider is, Lucas Raymond and Dylan Larkin have had really, really good chemistry. So, the other player to consider is, they've liked Robbie Fabry at center in the past. Do they try him there again, or do they prefer him on the wing and have just Comfer play second line center, or do they go back to Kopp? That's what training camp is for, Traverse City, to work out those things exhibition season. But I think for sure, you want to try and see how DeBrincat looks with Larkin when training camp begins.
I guess the point is, and your point and everybody's point, is that there are options now in a way that there just have not been.
Exactly.
Offensively. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
This reminds me a little bit like, not exactly, but it reminds me a little like the Oilers when they've had McDavid and Draisaitl, and they've been on the same line, and then they split them up to kind of, divvy up the wealth. But then in the playoffs, when they were struggling a little bit, they might on the power play, they would definitely be on the power play, but they might move them onto the same line when they needed some instant scoring. And of course, it hurts the other lines. But I just wonder if that's going to happen a little bit. And it's training camp, but then as the season bears out, right, you might find different matchups that are more favorable if you spread out the scoring a little bit. But I really look forward to...
That's what the Wings used to do with Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg, split them up, and when needed, put them on the same line. That's absolutely what happened there. Like if So sometimes, it's good to put your best eggs in the same basket, but other times, Datsuk and Zetterberg worked very, very well. I think we should be so fortunate that they get those two players reappear in new form, but along those lines, but that's what for Lalonde and his coaching staff to figure out. But it's just they just have so many more options, and I really thought, again, after free agency, you're looking at who they signed, and Sprong coming off a career high 21 goals, good addition, but it's a lot to ask him to come into the top six and duplicate or improve on that. So, but adding Alex, it just makes all of their top line, their second line, and their third line better because of the depth the options they now have.
Speaking of improvement, do you believe, or let me phrase it this way instead. So Yzerman has said a few times that he feels like Dylan Larkin can still get better. I don't know how much better, but better. And I'm curious what you think about maybe where he can get to. What is his ceiling? Do you buy into that he's not the player he can be?
Well, he's getting to be an age where, I think you're seeing a large part of what he is. Can he improve his stats? Absolutely. part of it is, you have to have players who can finish your passes. You have to have players who can set you up, or, your numbers aren't going to be there. But I think he'll benefit from having more skill on his line. He's a pretty straightforward player, not, really good speed and such. Not a Pavel Datsuk type as far as playmaking and such. But, I think that, I don't know why you would say they put a ceiling on him. I think if you're the Wings, you want to hope all of them can, continue to show a little more as they rise through their 20s and such. But I don't think we're going to see a significantly different Dylan Larkin.
Yeah, I think Larkin's fine. He's a 30-goal scorer. He's really good defensively. He makes a lot of things happen. He makes everybody on his line better. Strong leader, fights back. I wish more guys would take. And I hope that's one of the things with DeBrincat is, that feistiness. I hope that kind of permeates throughout the team. I think the Wings could use that a little bit more. But Larkin's really good. But like you said, he's never going to be an electric player. He's fast, but he's not going to be this. Is he going to ever get to 100 points? Maybe. If lightning strikes and everybody's great on his line and all that, but I think he's just fine where he is. I don't think we don't need to see a ton of improvement. And leadership is important, right? And if he's good for 2 or 3 crying sessions a year in a press conference, that touches my heart. So he cares, and he got that extension, so he's here for a long time. And it's funny because I don't know why fans are kind of down on him sometimes, like he doesn't do enough. I don't know if he's what the standard is. Maybe he's just not quite as good as Zetterberg was, and he's not the leader that Yzerman was.
He's not, in that Matthews. Steven Stamkos, like elite
right.
Top line center category. He's a step below. And so, had the Wings gotten to draft, within the top 3 or something, and added, even in 2020, added Tim Stützle, or even this year been lucky enough to drop to 3 and get Adam Fantilli, there'd be a great deal of excitement for that. But the fact is, I think Steve has done a really, really good job, considering that the highest he has drafted is 4th. And even before he got here, the Wings have, drafted 6th, 8th, 9th. They just haven't had any luck in the lottery to get access to those players that can transform your franchise, And meanwhile, Chicago goes all in on a rebuild and trades DeBrincat to Ottawa for a really good deal last year, and they're rewarded by moving up in the draft lottery and getting Connor Bedard. So, but no, to go back to Dylan, he's a very good player, and he cares a ton. And I don't think you can ever really look at a game and fault his effort.
No, not at all. No, and you're right. What is he, a top 30, 40 player, or somewhere in there? And that's, to your point, really good. I just thought it was interesting that Yzerman has said a couple of times in the last month or whatever that he thought there was still more there. And I know that's something the coaches and GMs say sometimes. So I was just curious. Maybe maybe getting a little bit more skill, to your point, will unlock a few things in a way we haven't seen consistently. Just for opportunity, yeah.
Yeah, they've relied on him so much, and even, Bertuzzi missed so much time this past year. He missed most of the season in, I think it was 2020 when he left 9 games in with it and ended up having back surgery. And before Lucas Raymond came along, Dillon, they relied on him to be out against the opponent's top player and be the leading scorer and not have much of a supporting cast. It was a lot to ask. And there were, that 2019-20 season when they only won 17 games, it was just miserable, and to his credit, Dillon has been a stand-up guy throughout all of it. And I think you see that, and that's why he was such an easy choice to be named captain.
That's one of the things that I think, fans and media, whatever, we think of it one way, of you're adding DeBrincat, good deal. He's a good player. He's going to help. But for the players themselves, what does it say to the team when you finally have made a move like this and bring in a guy, an established offensive weapon? What does that do for people like Larkin and the rest of the team? As far as their confidence, I guess, in the plan and the Eisner plan moving forward.
No, it says to them that, hey, this, and Steve really sent that message last summer when he signed Perron and Sherratt and Ali Mata, Ali Umlaut, all these guys that, hey, it's time to start moving out of the rebuild. And then things went badly last year because 2 games into the season, they lost Bertuzzi and Rana, 2 guys they were counting on for 30 goals. And then, things went really bad. You talk about having some bite and pushing back. There was none of that in late February when they went to Ottawa. And it was one thing for them to lose that first game. Everybody has games like that. But then they came out the next night and got pushed around even more. And that's when Steve said, okay, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone. And that sent a message to the team, too, that, hey, this needs to be better. And, he made the business decision. Tyler, they weren't going to be able to. There was no common ground on re-signing him. He had to trade him rather than lose him for nothing. But now, you fast forward to free agency here, and he's showing them, look, I signed a bunch of guys, and then he makes this huge trade that, there are growing expectations on this team. And yeah, Steve is not going to say, okay, this is the day we have to make the playoffs by. But the message is being sent that, you've got to start improving. There's got to be more competitiveness. And they have to consider the fan base as well. This is, what are you selling the team on? Well, now you're selling the team with a great deal or much, much better because you have Alex DeBrincat on the roster. And you can say, hey, we look like we're going to be much better. Come buy a season ticket or at least one ticket.
But before we let you go, I want to ask both of you, actually. So speaking of that, what are the expectations for each of you this winter? What's reasonable? What's maybe pie in the sky? What can we expect?
I do think they can make the playoffs now. You also have to look at it from the standpoint of within their division. I think Tampa is still a very good team, but I do think their window is kind of closing. We saw that already this past season. Boston, still some questions about who comes back. What's their roster going to look like? But, they were coming off a record-setting season and then had that enormous disappointment in the playoffs. And again, a team I think you kind of have to ask. Toronto and Florida, I think you have to consider are certainly playoff teams. Buffalo is steadily getting better. One of these days they're going to end their drought and get back to the playoffs. But I think the Wings, I would expect them, to push, to be able to legitimately push for a playoff spot and end what's become a 7-year drought.
I think that, I'm scared of saying playoffs because if I say playoffs, I think Yzerman's going to reach to the screen and slap me because he refuses to even say the word. As Helene asked him the other day, he's like, I think we'll be more competitive for sure. But I don't think he's ever going to say the word playoffs until they actually make the playoffs, probably. I think that my expectation for them is to grab one of the wild card spots or be close to it toward the end of the season. This is barring like significant injuries, right? Like,
yeah, always, yeah.
But just if everything is, fairly normal, some guys get banged up here and there, of course, but I think they should be challenging, like right in the thick of it toward the end of the season. And I also don't even know. I mean, if Yzerman hadn't gotten rid of everybody, if they kept Bertuzzi, I don't know that they wouldn't have been at the thick of it either, even though those Senators games were an indictment and all that stuff. And he talked about it and, a barometer of sorts for Yzerman to judge where they were. But I liked their commitment to the loans, system. I liked the effort nightly. There were some bad games here and there, of course. But I don't know that they would have been completely out of it. So I think this year that considering that there's movement toward talent upgrades and you've got a guy like DeBrincat now, and then if he makes the difference everybody thinks he should make, I would guess that they'll take one of the wild card spots or come really close to it. What about you, Sean? You have your Stanley. Are you ready for the parade down Woodward already?
You're in Vegas. What are you putting your money on?
Ooh, I really, really, really like the fight and sort of the togetherness. And I remember I was with you one of those towards the end of that winning streak I'm talking about before Ottawa. And I remember you and I were talking about Helene a little bit at the arena. And after the game, I can't remember who they beat, but they won. And
the
I remember,
Rangers.
Yeah. And Lalonde was talking about the margin for error and how small it was. And he was trying to tamp down the fact that they were winning all those games, or trying to remind everybody this is where we are in the process. Well, yeah, adding the talent they added and the scoring they added, that margin to me just got a little wider. And that's really the key. So you can win on nights maybe when some other things aren't there because your margin is a little bit bigger. So, yeah, assuming health like y'all, they were pushing for a playoff spot a year ago. I mean, they were in what was the 8th, 7th at one point right before Ottawa.
They got into 8th when they won that game the week before the Ottawa series, and they weren't technically mathematically eliminated until the last week because it was so tight, even though everybody could see it coming. But no, I mean, compared to years prior when they were out of it by Christmas, they were. I mean, to go back again to that 2020. They were the only team mathematically eliminated when the NHL shut down March 12th. So,
right, yeah. So to me, what we saw last year, then what they just added, and with the new staff and with still all the youth, and you assume the youth gets better.
What I mean, Moritz Seider, Lucas Raymond, all growing and getting better. I mean, Moritz Seider is phenomenal. So. You keep that growth coming from the young guys from within, and keep adding draft picks and who are challenging for jobs. They're absolutely in the right direction. It's just how quickly can they get there?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Anything that you'd like to plug before you go?
Can you put $20 on something for me while you're out in Vegas? Just something.
Sure.
Well, if anybody needs back-to-school reading or gifts for whatever is coming up, my Big 50, the men and moments that made the Detroit Red Wings and On the Clock, behind the scenes with the Red Wings at the NHL draft, available and easy to personalize if you want to reach out to me at hstjames@freepress.com. So.
Well, cool. Well, I encourage y'all to do that. And any last thoughts, Carlos, before we let our friend go here?
They're fantastic books. I really enjoy reading them. It's a great history. The only thing I wish is that there was a third book I could read from Helene St. James, but that's wishful thinking. I'm happy for the two. Hopefully one of these days, but the first two are fantastic. So absolutely pick one up.
Well, thanks again, Helena. Enjoy your incredibly well-earned and well-deserved break. And we'll talk to you when the season gets closer.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
All right. Thanks. That's Helene St. James, everyone. Carlos and I will be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. We are moving on from hockey now, Carlos. I hope that's okay with you.
Yeah, it's cool going from your favorite sport, which is hockey, to your second favorite sport, which is college basketball.
Yeah,
No,
I do.
college basketball is your favorite. It's your Michigan State basketball. There's no team you like covering more, right?
No, that's not true. The NBA is what I enjoy the most. I mean, I love covering football because it's there's so much going on. But yeah, no, the NBA is my favorite, kind of like baseball is yours. But I like college basketball too.
You can only cover one team in the Detroit, the 6 teams, four pro, and
8
I guess
teams.
8 teams, right? 8 teams, only one team for the rest of your life.
The Pistons. Yeah, the Pistons. The best cities at the right time.
Travel though, but you don't get to travel. It's only home games.
Only home games. The Pistons. Yeah.
Pressing X. I'm pressing X it out on that.
No, of course it would be the Pistons. I think
you're sitting front row with your BFF Tom Izzo.
No. I enjoy college basketball and the atmosphere is great, but the sport itself is just, it'd be like covering.
I'm not talking about the sport. I'm talking about like the team, covering the team and the atmosphere.
I'd want to cover the Pistons, even though the fan base is whatever. I'd want to cover relative to some of the others. I'd want to cover the Pistons because to me, in the end, it's got to be about the sport. If that's all you're going to do,
yeah.
That'd be like going to cover the Mud Hens instead of the Tigers. It's essentially the same.
You better not hear Tom hear you say that, man.
Well, he would agree with that. Tom would say, the Mud Hens are better than we are relative to the sport, right? I mean, it's true. I mean, AAA baseball is probably closer to the big leagues than an average Division I basketball is the NBA. Wouldn't you say?
Could be. Yeah, that's good. Interesting comparison. Not bad.
But in any case, for some reason, you want to talk about Michigan State basketball in July.
Well, for some reason, you wrote about Michigan State basketball in July. So we need to talk about it because apparently people... Okay, so I think we've mentioned this before. So
if you don't understand the reader, is that what you're going to say?
If our one listener can recall this, we talked about engagement and all that stuff, all the metrics involved in our stories, and anybody can look this up. But if you go to Sean's column that ran, was it last week, I believe, about Moneyball and watching this vaunted class of Tom Izzo's come in and play basically glorified pickup games, we had. I think your column had more than 260 comments on it. Now, anytime you write Michigan State, it's half of it is Michigan State, half of it is Michigan fans jumping on there, picking fights and all this other stuff.
Oh, I didn't even see the comments. I didn't see there were that many comments. Wow.
Oh, they're great. And if you ever just bored, just go to any random Michigan State story on our website and look at the comments because it's just the fighting among the fan base is just delicious. But a lot of comments is like 50 comments is a lot for any article, sports, otherwise, whatever. 100 something's going on. 200 something is some seismic shift has happened in the fabric of journalism. So to have 260 plus comments on this, no matter where they're coming from or whatever, is a lot. And it did very well. I can tell you from the metrics, readership, subscribers, all that stuff, things that really matter to us. And I believe it was Sean playing to his, being in his wheelhouse of, whipping up hope for people and how good this team's going to be. And it's going to be it's Tom Izzo's best recruiting class ever. And
I didn't write that.
All this stuff. And that's what I assumed it was, but it really wasn't. It was just you wandering over to a gym, having to, satiate your basketball Jones because you've been without it since the spring for college basketball anyway. So what did you find? Well, you went over to where was it that you went? Holt? You went to watch this game? Yeah,
they moved it. It used to be in it used to be at sort of a glorified rec center, which was massive, almost like a warehouse, like a couple of Best Buys put together. Instead of apples and security cameras, there are a couple of basketball floors. And I wish I could remember the name of that town because that's where I used to go to it. I had actually not been in a couple of years, maybe probably since before COVID. And one of the reasons is, well, COVID shut it down. And another one was they haven't really had a class, a recruiting class that I knew had that kind of interest. That's really the only reason I went. It was the recruiting class, the interest in that recruiting class combined with, and this is what's a little bit different about his team, and we'll see if it matters. I mean, you just never know. But what's a little bit different is he has this recruiting class combined with a team that was a bucket away from the Elite Eight with almost everybody returning. And a couple of people, one in particular taking a fifth year. And that's what's a little bit unusual. Normally, you often have a recruiting class like this. They're joining a young team or a bunch of team or guys that are kind of role players. Some of these guys, the 2 5-star guys in this class, I'll be shocked if they start. In fact, there's no way Jeremy Fears, who's the point guard, is going to start. And Xavier Booker's got to put on some weight, and he may eventually start, maybe.
He's 6'10". How do you not start him?
Because he's not going to rebound and defend at the level right away. It's going to take a while. And because he can't play center, he's a perimeter player, basically, at this point. And he may grow into more. It's kind of like Wembanyama. You saw Victor Wembanyama in his debut. He got pushed around. He did better in his second game, but he was mostly on the perimeter. Defensively, he protected the rim, and that's where Booker, and I wrote this, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe I was talking about Cohen Carr at that point, but that's where Booker can get on the floor. In any case, it's a little bit different that you got a couple of 5-star guys coming in that may well not, they'll play, but I'll be shocked if they start, especially Fears. So that's what's a little different.
Okay, so who's the class is Garrick Norman, Cohen Carr, Xavier Booker, Jeremy Fears. Who stood out?
Well, Norman didn't play.
He didn't play.
He wasn't. I don't even think he was there that night. It's so hard to tell. As I wrote in the column, it's a pickup game. There are a few things you can see, for sure, but so little of it translates. I mean, you can see size, you can see height, you can see quickness, you can see effort a little bit. One thing with Booker is that because he's thin and because he's skilled on the perimeter at 6'10", he likes to shoot from outside. So Izzo will probably eventually let him do that, as he did Adrian Payne, but Adrian Payne didn't get to shoot for his first couple of years. And I know the era is a little bit different. That was long enough ago now that he might be a little looser with that. But in any case, I don't know. I didn't know what to make of Booker other than the fact that he's 6'10", he can handle the ball, he can shoot. What he's going to do, how they're going to use him just yet, he's not that physical. We will see. But the guy that I really liked was Fears. I like Carr, too, as a small forward. He's really, really athletic. He can't shoot at all. And to get on the floor, he's going to have to rebound and know where to be defensively and be physical. And I would imagine he'll get some minutes doing that. But I like Fears, the point guard, who's could have gone to most teams and would be an instant starter, but because he's behind A.J. Hoggard, Tyson Walker, and Jaden Akins, he's not going to start. But I thought it was interesting that Akins and a couple other guys, I said, what stands out about Fears? And he's how vocal he is. So an 18-year-old coming in, kind of acting like it's his team, that's what stands out to me about him. And that'll serve him well. Is he a 5-star? He is.
So why did he come here if he's not going to start right away?
Well, I think Fears committed banking on Walker was supposed to leave, right? Walker came back, got that COVID year. So that would have been his spot. And and that was a fairly late decision. And I think Fears is the kind of kid that at that point liked the program, wanted to come play, had his reasons he wanted to come play for Izzo and Michigan State. And I'm sure he liked the family atmosphere that so many of them talk about, and just didn't want to decommit and go transfer at that point. So he wanted to stick with him. Yeah. So that's kind of it's just a little unusual to have 5-star guys joining a team where there are upperclassmen who are good enough to go play in the league potentially. I mean, Akins has got a shot at the league. Walker probably doesn't. Hoggard, if he can get a little better shooting, he will at least get invited to a camp. So, so you're a 5-star, whatever. You're coming in and you're going to take the job from a senior who's got NBA possibility. I mean, they're not lottery talent, right? But they've got possibility. It's just not going to happen.
And you wrote about how, all this talent, right? It's all here. It's impressive. It's promising, whatever. but it's all about the collective, and that's what Tom Izzo's about, right? The team and how it fits with the team. So is this almost too much talent for him to handle? He's got to work it all together.
No, it's funny. I was talking about this with a couple of people, and that's by far his biggest challenge next year. He's got too deep at every spot. He's got 11 guys, maybe 12. I mean, he's got a Trey Holloman was a freshman point guard last year. He's a nice Michigan State kind of player. Where's he going to fit in, right? I mean, he's going to have to say. I mean, we'll see what happens with him. But so, how do you manage all that? You got young guys that are coming in with big expectations, 5-star rankings, 4-star rankings. You got older guys who have making, and NIL has made this interesting too, right? They got NIL money and they got NBA ambitions. And you're too deep at every spot. You maybe have 11 guys who could legitimately say, "Hey, I'm worth 20 minutes a game." That's a lot because you can't play that many. So how do you keep all that? How do you keep factions from forming? How do you keep the young guys connected to the old guys? How many times have you watched a team, no matter the sport, if you don't have that, you're sunk?
Oh yeah, doesn't matter how much talent you have.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
Now what happens with, as you mentioned, from the beginning of this segment, they were a basket away from the Elite Eight. So is that the bar?
Well, the fan base is probably going to hope for a Final Four, right? I mean, how many has he been to them? 8 or whatever it is. So, and he hadn't been to one in a minute again. 18, was that the last one? 18, 19, somewhere in there. I would bet, I know that's what the players are talking about. The funny thing is they won't even be favored in the Big Ten. Purdue will, because they've got everybody coming back. Now they lost, they got upset, but they won the Big Ten last year by 3 games. So I can't believe we're talking about the Big Ten and Purdue, and it's July.
Preseason, Sean Windsor's preseason Big Ten rankings, power rankings. Here we go.
I went up to Moneyball because I hadn't been in a few years, and because of the recruiting class, and because I wanted to write a column about, this talent is interesting and it's promising in a lot of ways. And the upperclassmen talent showed a lot down the stretch last year. And they got great guard play. But, we've seen this sort of situation submarine a lot of teams. And that's really what I wanted to write about. And that's kind of what I did write about. So, with setting the scene up there with, I don't know. I mean, it was packed, as you can imagine.
What is the vibe there? I mean, who goes to these? Is it college fans? Is it?
Yeah, the Michigan State fans. It's Michigan State fans. Yeah. It's the whole crowd is green and white. Yeah. And it's been like that for a while. But the last time I went up there was probably the Xavier Tillman, Jaren Jackson class. So that's been a while, right? Yeah. Which followed the Cassius Winston, Nick Ward, that class. So we had back-to-back classes with some high-profile guys, and that's when it really buzzes. But I knew people would have interest in it, for sure. It surprised me a little bit how it did.
A little bit, a lot of it. That was
but the football team doesn't. There's not much expectation. So that's the thing. Michigan State, the psychology up there. It's interesting with that fan base, and it's not that they're looking past the football season, but they don't think Michigan's supposed to be really good football. Michigan State's not. So when the years are like that, and then you get this recruiting class coming in off a team that showed a lot of promise last year with most people back, anything to divert. They want to think about that, right?
But how many months are we?
It's
how
not
many
that
months
far.
are we away from college basketball?
Not as far as you think. So basically, August, September, October, and camp starts in October, and the games start in November. So 4 months. Yeah. And it's a tradition up there. And whenever he's got a class coming in like that, there's always a lot of interest. Well,
that's the thing. That's the credit to Tom Izzo and what he's built. Is just like that fanaticism that base has. I mean, I'm glad that I've lived to see it and watch it and live through it and have that experience. And to me, it's the closest thing you get, right, to ACC hoops or whatever in this area. So it's great. I'm glad that they're doing it. And it was a smart idea for you to go lean in on that because there's a lot of interest. I wonder, if Michigan had something like this, really, would there be that kind of a following? I mean, maybe if they try to build it up over years.
Yeah,
but Tom
maybe.
Izzo is an institution. Juwan Howard is not going to be around long enough.
Maybe so. I just knew that the combination of the lack of expectation for football, the couple of 5 stars, the late season push, the fact that those guys are coming back, and I knew it would get read, and especially with the idea I had, which was, can you have too much of a good thing, and balancing that out. I didn't want to. I made sure at the top of the column to say this is pickup ball, right? And you can't take too much out of this. And I didn't want to go up there and just say, "Oh my God, look at this person! Look what they're doing! Look at the dunks! Look at this!" Because it's like coming to the summer league. I'm in Vegas as we're recording this, and you got to be careful in the same way with the NBA summer league.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
Or spring training. It's a similar, right? It's the
right.
same kind of. I mean, you were at spring training. Aren't you a little bit cautious about what you're seeing?
Oh, of course, because you don't know who they're. It's all got to be put in perspective of who are these 2 home runs coming against? A guy who's gonna start off in high single A or whatever. So
no, it's funny because I wrote about Michigan State, and I wrote about Eisman trying to get DeBrincat, Alex DeBrincat, and I wrote about
DeBrincat, not DeBrincat.
DeBrincat. Sorry, and I wrote about the Pistons and free agency, and one other thing, and I'm this mistaken me, but I actually held off on the Wings thing because they were taking their time to go do the Moneyball, and I told our editor that, he's like, oh yeah, get up there. I said I want to go up there, and the trick was because it was night, and I was trying to see everybody. Carlos, and this is maybe a little bit too much inside baseball, but so the gym, you leave the gym, there's no Wi-Fi. And so I go to my car and sit on my car and on my laptop and use the phone for the Wi-Fi to write. And because my laptop is a little bit old, it write about, a paragraph before I was done. The computer died. And I was about 17, 18 minutes before deadline at that point. And I was out in Holt and there's nothing around, right? And so I thought, oh my God, where am I going to go find Wi-Fi or go find power, rather, at almost 10 o'clock at night? It was a 9:50 deadline.
How do you not have a power adapter in your car?
My car doesn't. It doesn't handle the whatever the requirements for that. So I found a gas station that had a big convenience store, and I went in and got something to drink. And I said, "Is there any way I can have an outlet around here anyway?" Well, sure enough, next to the hot dog warmers. That was empty, like the carnival kind of hot dog where they spin on the,
Oh yeah.
It was empty
right next to the nachos and
yeah, exactly. There was an extension cord, and she said, "Yeah, hon, you can plug in there." And I said, "Oh, thank you so much." So I plugged in. How it takes a minute to reboot when you've lost power. Get the Wi-Fi. I finally get in there and write my paragraph and filed right on deadline. And I finished it standing. It was all standing up. So. That's what we do, right? All
right. Well, so our boss Kirk doesn't really listen to this podcast, so you can just admit you ate. How many hot dogs did you eat before you actually rebooted?
No, it was empty, and I was really.
You were hungry too, weren't you?
Oh, I was super hungry because I hadn't had dinner. It was kind of because I got there at 5 or you got there before dinner hour, and then it goes through. It's one of those things, right? And I just didn't plan that out very well. But after I filed, I was hungry. Nothing's open except for fast food. I got a fillet of fish and immediately regretted it just down the street before I hit the highway to go back home.
Sounds like a country song. I got a fillet of fish and regretted it.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at, eh? Anyway, if Kirk is listening, we probably ought to get a new laptop.
Yeah, I'm due for one too. So Kirk, please requisition those. We need them ASAP because we want to save Sean from bad fillet fishes.
But anyway, yeah. So anytime, Carlos, you can go out and write about, if there's some interest or excitement, whether it's a recruiting class, a free agent signing, a draft, whatever, and you can go out and kind of try to deal with it a little bit, put your own thoughts to it. Yeah, I think you'll be okay because what else do we have? We don't have winning.
Oh, how dare you? The Lions are about to start training camp next season. We don't have winning.
We have the Lions maybe, but and Michigan football, but what else?
And Michigan State basketball.
Michigan State, but of the pro teams, of the teams that unite everybody, of the teams that unite everybody, we just don't have much winning, do we? So the draft and the free agents and the trades, that's what gets people through, and recruiting, I guess.
Our colleague Jeff Seidel has made a little side business, cottage industry out of.
Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen anybody write about the baseball draft so much? Good for him. I don't blame him.
Oh no! Forget the draft. It's going to single A games. It's going to Whitecaps game, Comstock, and going to like Erie. Double A is like high limit for him. So
what's that tell you? It tells you the Tigers stink. I mean,
they stink, and you gotta. But it's kind of a little bit aligned to what you're doing. Is hope. Like, what is the next thing? What is the promise of the future? You know, which people always want to hear about that, and
they do.
And also these draft picks. DeBrincat kind of fits in that mold too.
Of course, of course, he does.
Quantity, but
you and I both wrote about him. In fact, I was thinking when I read your column about DeBrincat that you were disappointed they signed him, because it seemed to me like what you were really trying to write about is Steve Yzerman blew it. You wanted to rip into Yzerman for not signing DeBrincat. That's what the column read. Like you were somehow disappointed that you had to give him credit for getting it done.
No, I was, because you wrote your column first, and you were saying, well, I don't know if you used the word panacea, but is this the end all be all? Is this going to solve everything?
I've never used that.
And we didn't know if that was going to happen or not.
No, don't you hate writing that? Thanks a lot, Kirk. You and I have had conversations about this. When you have to write a column about it, it's one thing to write a news story, but when you have to write a column and try to have something to say about something you have no idea if it's going to happen or not, that's yeah.
That's column writing, buddy. We don't know what's going to happen all the time.
You told me last time it was a free agent period. It was something, and you're like, "No, I don't want to do that. I want to wait and see what happens, and then I can make an opinion about it." And so, yeah.
Well, it depends. If something's imminent, like writing, and this is one of the curses. This is very inside baseball, but yeah, they're on the brink of possibly signing somebody. And that was the danger with when you wrote the DeBrincat, is it was maybe going to happen, and you could have filed that column and it happened that night. And then the column appears the next morning and
they would have held it. No, we talked about that possibility, and I tried to write.
What if it already runs? If it runs, it publishes at 7 a.m, and then they announce a signing at 10 a.m, then
you're buried on the website,
I know, but it's kind of a little bit meaningless.
That's happened before. That's part of our part of our life, digital life, right? I mean, that's actually happened a few times where you write something.
And that's my only thing is when something is going to happen, it's going to happen either way. Like DeBrincat was just never going to stay on the market forever. Someone was going to sign him. So.
He was either going to get him or not, and that's two very different columns, right? So
right. But I wasn't disappointed. I like DeBrincat. I love his game, as I wrote. So it's well,
hopefully it'll make
I'm a hockey
competitive.
Fan.
Yeah, if it makes it more competitive, that's good for everybody.
More competitive and more, absolutely. There's and that was one of the things that I was bummed about with Bertuzzi was I liked watching him. I liked his game, and he was fun. He was feisty. He had really great hands, great vision. And he was unique in that way among the wings. So I was bummed to see him go as a hockey player. So DeBrincat brings some of that. So it'll just be more interesting to go to the games and watch them or watch them on TV, whatever it is.
Absolutely. Well, with that, let's take one more quick break, Carlos, and come back with the favorite thing. Your favorite thing. We don't need my favorite thing. It's all about you. That's what's important. We'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. It's that time of the show, Carlos. Your favorite thing.
My favorite thing, which becomes Sean's favorite thing. All right. Mine is simple, actually. And I had one, but I changed it because of today. You were part of this, Sean. We had a big sports meeting among our illustrious colleagues talking about many different things, most of it audio recordings and our podcasts. And we don't get to gather that often, especially in sports. It's so hard to get people from sports together because we're all moving around, and some of us travel to exotic places like Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's pretty exotic.
It was exotic for you, and you're in the the penthouse up there and whatever. But people logged in through Zoom. There were about 10 of us downtown in the Free Press building in a conference room. And I was talking to my wife about this not too long ago, but I think sometimes when you've done your job for a long time and you've done it with very talented people, you kind of take it for granted how good these people are, how talented they are, how hard they work to get to where they are and to be there. And it struck me that, we are very fortunate to be among those people, to be among our fellow sports writers, sports editors, podcast producers, metrics people, all these different people who make a lot of things happen. And as you were in that meeting, there are so many steps to making things happen. And sometimes it seems easy, but it really isn't. It really takes a whole village to produce a podcast, to come up with the idea, how to market it, how to do it. I mean, you and I are just talking monkeys, but Robin Chan is the person who's doing the hard work behind the scenes. And people like, Brian Manzullo, Anjanette Delgado, Kirkland, all these different people, who were involved in this process. And I remember thinking back when I was a young journalist growing up in LA, and I can remember thinking about the LA Times was the big paper in my town, and how much I looked up to the writers and some of the editors and who I knew of, and thinking, wow, it must be so cool to work with people who are so good and just beginning my career. And when you're just starting off in the business, there's a lot of challenges and frustrations, and things aren't done as well as they should be done. There's, the level of professionalism just isn't there yet. And thinking one day, wouldn't it be cool to work at a place like the LA Times? And sitting in that room today, I was realizing, not realizing, but just reminded that that's where I am, that's where we are lucky enough to work these days, is among those people, with those people, sharing ideas, coming up with, innovative and inspiring ways to do our best work. And I have to keep reminding myself, because you and I have been in this business for a really long time. In fact, one of the editors there today was saying she remembered me from when she had been an apprentice, I believe, 15 years ago. And now she's one of her important editors. And when you're there that long, I think you lose sight sometimes of the bigger picture and who you work with, who you're lucky to work with. So I was really happy. This is one of my, by far, not only favorite things of this week, but favorite things in a long time, to be able to hang out and share that time with our colleagues today.
Well, that's really nice. Look at you thinking about the team and the community and your fellow folks. That's really nice. And it was a nice gathering. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there, so I had to.
We had pizza. You missed out.
Yeah. I could tell. Well, I couldn't tell. I was told you were eating pizza, and then I could hear it. but that could have been anything. That could have been a sock you were chewing on or whatever. But no, that's nice, and you're right. We are very lucky to work at the Free Press, and we are surrounded by really talented, smart, and caring folks. I mean, that's just the truth. My favorite thing, Carlos, is, and this was sort of a spur of the moment thing. I didn't realize this was going to happen, but as you mentioned, Vegas, yes, as we record, I am in Vegas. I'm out here for the NBA Summer League. And I was originally going to come 4 or 5 days ago for the first couple of games. And then our sports editor, Kirkland Crawford, who helps oversee this podcast, and I had the bright idea that let's push it back, because the Detroit Pistons are going to play the San Antonio Spurs to wrap up the Summer League. And we can write about Victor Wembanyama. And plus Omari Sankovic II, who covers the Pistons for us, really, really well, was here for the first couple of games, and I take the last two. There are only 4, and then we have them all covered. So that kind of made some sense. And then, of course, the Spurs shut down Victor Wembanyama, and But that's okay. We're not here for the Spurs. We're here for the Pistons. In any case, I say all that to say this. I got a text from my brother the other day saying, "Hey, when are you going to Vegas?" And I tell him, and he says, "Mallory's out there. Mallory's his daughter, which makes her my niece." And I love this kid to death. And I said, "No way." Well, she's a junior. She's going to be a junior at Michigan State. She's in a marketing internship with a company that does business with Ford, and they were doing some kind of Bronco sport, something off-road out here. And she got the opportunity to come and do some social media marketing work with them as an intern. And she was here. She and I were going to overlap one night, which was what night is it? I don't even, what day is this? I'm confused. It was Tuesday night. We made plans. I'd already had plans to go to dinner with Amari and Vince Ellis, who used to work for us, who works for the Pistons now, works for Platinum Equity for Tom Gores, at Vince's favorite, and Amari's too, favorite restaurant almost anywhere. It's a Thai place. It's really well known. It's really incredible, actually. One of the best Thai joints in the country. So I said, "Hey, can I bring my 19-year-old niece?" And they said, "Sure." So we did. And there was Vince and Amari and me and my niece, Mallory. And she got to try different stuff, new things, just be out on the road a little bit with the sports writers. Vince is a little bit older, Amari's young, so that was a nice combination. And it was just great. And she was staying out at some casino resort about 30 minutes out, so I go pick her up. So we had that time, and then I dropped her off. Her parents did not want me to let her Uber by herself, but which I don't blame them. But no, it was great. I haven't spent that kind of time with her in a good while, and just with her, probably since she was young, and would occasionally watch her babysit or something. But it was really, really great, and a bonus. And I had no idea it was going to happen. It happened in a flash. So the day before I got on the plane to come out here. So that was by far my favorite thing.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, and now it's just me. Everybody's gone. Everybody went back home, rightly so. They want to beat the Heat before it gets to be 117. We were looking it up over the break, right? That's what's coming? But yeah. You're like, that's nothing. 126. I play golf in it. It's fine.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We grew up in the West. We grew up hard, man. This is what we know all the time. It's common for us. Yeah,
but there's no humidity, right? That's what folks say. It's a dry heat.
It's a dry heat.
But anyway, no, that's a great favorite thing of yours. And that was one of the better nights I've had in a row in a long time. And it was just totally unexpected. It was great. So in any case, all right, my man, fun show. Thanks for everything. Good to be back here with you. And we'll talk about more baseball and hockey next week. Does that sound good?
I don't know if we have to promise that, but yeah, maybe we should. Okay,
I don't know. Who knows?
Baseball for sure.
Yeah.
We got to talk, and we also got to talk about your new favorite team, the Lions, starting training camp pretty soon.
Oh, my goodness, they are, aren't they?
Sneaking up on us.
It is, man. And it's going to be August, and then it'll be Christmas. That's kind of how it goes, right?
That's right. From August to Christmas.
Here's your assignment for the week. Come back with some tips and advice on how we can slow this down, because it's going by way too quick.
Yeah, I have a great one.
Yeah, maybe Robin can help us slow the planet down. I mean, it might mess the gravity up a little bit, but we might all start floating away. But let's slow that time down. All right, man. We need to thank some people. Who are we thanking?
Well, we've already mentioned them. I guess we're mentioning them way too often. But Robin Chan, our producer, who makes this, does all the hard work behind the scenes, as we know. And our two executive producers, Kirkland Crawford and Anjanette Delgado. And our editor, Nicole Avery Nichols, who signs the checks and makes everything work on time. And but mostly, Sean, who's the most important person we got to thank?
Y'all out there listening. We're very grateful and happy to have you with us. And as you know, and I don't know, we all know this, we say this anyway, but yeah, you can find us wherever you find your favorite podcasts, at Spotify, at Apple, at various other platforms. Who knows? I don't know. They come and go. But when you get there, give us a shout, rate us, and most importantly, subscribe. And until then, Carlos, till what? Next week? Yeah, we'll be back next week. All right. We'll be back next week with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean.